draft was set 18.5, but the gap between authorizing and employed peacekeepers is at 8,000 is widening. Honestly, 1920, the lack of peacekeepers makes it more difficult for peacekeepers to complete their objectives and fulfill their mandate. The impact of this contention is allows the UNC to uphold the UN Charter. Under the UN Charter, UNC must maintain peace and order around the world. UN 19.5, under the UN Charter, UNC must and has a moral obligation to maintain peace and security around the world. Adding India would boost the number of peacekeepers that we see around the world. It would also cause India to continue in places such as Congo, and adding them as a permanent member of the UNSC gives them the incentive to do so. Thus, we affirm. Thank you.
Partner ready? Opponents ready? Yeah. Judges ready? My time starts now. Greetings, Judge. Today, my partner and I would like to negate the resolution of the United Nations to grant India permanent membership on the Security Council. Our standard for this debate is international benefits. Contention 1, tension escalation with Pakistan and China leading to a terrorism increase. India being added to the Security Council would be seen as a major slight and will inflame tensions. India and Pakistan are already not in a good position right now, and since Pakistan has made it clear that they don't want India as part of the UNSC, tensions could escalate very quickly. Pakistan's ally China has also opposed India's permanent membership, so granting India permanent membership would just destroy an already shaky relationship between India and China. Tensions between India and Pakistan are escalating once again. India has blamed Pakistan for a February 14 terrorist attack on security forces in Kashmir that killed dozens of paramilitary troops. Modi has pledged a, quote, befitting reply and has given his military full freedom to respond. If India's enemies oppose the joining of India and the UNSC, that could just bring about more danger upon India in the form of bombings and attacks. One of India's most significant enemies has already verbally opposed India's joining of the Security Council. Quote, United Nations says, Pakistan, one of India's greatest enemies, has verbally opposed and launched a strong attack on India's quest for a permanent seat on the UN Security Council, blaming it as the primary stumbling block for reforms. Three powers, China, India, and Pakistan, hold the keys to the future of South Asia. The strategic landscape of the sub-region is defined by the complex interactions between these three. A rising superpower with a commercially defined unilateral approach to the region's strategic fault lines, a reluctant emergent power unwilling to commit political or diplomatic resources to stabilize the region or even to preserve the status quo, and a deeply dissatisfied revisionist power intent on redrawing the regional order. Adding India to the Council wrecks relations and diplomacy with China and Pakistan. A debate between the P5 for if India should be granted membership or not witnessed a division of opinion among the P5 members. Contention number 2, if India joins the UNSC, they will resist human rights intervention. Empirically, India has been opposed to UN intervention that defends human rights. India will also reject Kashmir intervention, as it has made explicitly clear in the past. Kashmir has a lot of human rights violations. The OHCHR report said that the Indian security forces used excessive force in response to the often violent protests that began in 2016, with civil society groups estimate killed as many as 145 people and injured many more. It is also said that armed groups killed up to 20 people in the same period, just hours after the report was released. Human rights violations currently stops India from getting a seat in the Permanent Council. The main obstacles on the way to India's permanent membership on the UNSC are its unresolved dispute in Kashmir, opposition from Pakistan, and some records of human rights violations. Also problematic is that India is still outside the NPT regime, although the significance of this has been debated. India has a major issue with child labor and needs to find a way to fix that. According to a campaign against child labor study, India has 1,266,377 child laborers. Child labor is prominent in rural India. 80% of working children live in India's villages, where most of them work in agriculture. Many Indians also do not have access to drinking water, and many live in poverty and poor conditions. India should fix its own problems before moving on to the international scale. India also does not protect free speech, making it harder for the truth about the dirty human rights conditions to be reported on. So, Article 19 of India's constitution does not guarantee the right to freedom of speech and expression. The Constitution also allows the government to limit freedom of expression in the interests of the sovereignty and integrity of India, the security of the state, friendly relationships with foreign states, public order, decency or morality, or in relation to the contempt of the court. Section 153A of Article 19 criminalizes promoting enmity between different groups on grounds of religion, race, place of birth, residence, language, etc. Section 124 of the Indian Penal Code states, quote, whoever by words, either spoken or written, or by signs, or by visible representation, or otherwise, brings or attempts to bring into hatred or contempt, or excites or attempts to excite dissatisfaction towards the government established by law in India shall be punished with imprisonment for life. India's Human Development Index is also one of the lowest in the world. Granting India a permanent seat would set a bad precedent for what developing countries of an acceptable level of human development should be for developing countries. Thus, we need a resolution.
Further, we stand for customs.
Whatever you like.
You may stand. All right, crossfire.
Okay, time starts now. Would you like the first question?
So you state in your, I think, second intention about human rights violations and how. So first of all, who have they committed against? You say Kashmiri people, right?
No, just in general all over India, and wait 1 second, let me clarify that for you. They have committed it all over India as well, but Kashmir is known for having a lot of
So
people.
how does adding India to the United Nations Security Council's permanent member affect that?
What we're saying is that if India joins the UNSC as a permanent member, it sets a bad precedent to other countries about what an acceptable level of human rights violation should be in HDI. Not to mention, one of the criteria for becoming a UNSC member is to have very low human rights violations.
Yeah, but if she's telling you that you actually commit really low levels of human rights violations, the problem will bring up later in the speech, does that dispute your entire point? Because you're basically talking about how India is unfit to join the UNSC, so bring it member because it commits these human rights violations, right?
Let's say, even if that was true, which I don't agree it is,
Okay.
empirically, India has been opposed to UN intervention that does defend human rights, and it doesn't protect free speech, which makes it harder for the conditions about human rights to be reported on. May I have a question now? Can you give me the percentage of the Indian peacekeeping missions that actually fulfill their objective?
We have questions, however, we can show you that we have cards that tell you that Indian peacekeeping was actually effective.
Yeah, but can I have like statistics?
Sure, I can probably bring it a little bit.
Oh yeah, no, could you just bring them up now? I really want to see.
Wait, so you're asking specific statistic of how many Indian peacekeepers are actually successful?
No, I'm asking statistics of not how many peacekeepers is successful, but how the peacekeeping missions fulfill their objective.
What do you mean fulfill their objective? Like to
I mean exactly that.
Exactly. So you're saying that Indian peacekeepers have fulfilled the mission?
No, I'm not saying anything. So yeah, please don't assume for me. I'm not saying anything. I'm asking you to bring up any statistics that you have for the percentage of Indian peacekeeping missions that actually fulfill their objectives.
Exactly. The reason we cannot bring up that percentage for you right now is because Indian peacekeepers are withdrawing, which makes it harder for these peacekeepers to fulfill their mandates.
Why are they withdrawing? Why are they withdrawing?
Exactly. That's our entire.
No, I'm asking you why they're withdrawing.
Exactly.
Yeah, please answer.
That the reason is because their bid for permanency of the UNSC appears stalled, which is why they're withdrawing because they don't. India doesn't feel like it has to keep contributing and get nothing in return from the.
So they're just basically using that as a bargaining chip.
Exactly.
Okay.
So is that a bad thing?
I don't know. Why don't you tell me? Do you think it's a bad thing?
No, because even if India's using it as a bargaining chip and it gets on the UNSC, we tell you that the UNSC can actually bargain with India to actually cause India to continue in Congo, and furthermore, showing yourself point A that it would actually influence these other countries to have better peacekeepers and contribute more peacekeepers.
Okay. Also, India's HDI and its history with human rights is not so good. So why should the UNSC accept a country with horrible? However, wait, please let me finish my question. Why should the UNSC accept a country with horrible development, including poor hygiene, lots of poverty, and low education levels, when the country is not even ready yet to go on the international scene?
No, however, the peacekeepers, they're peacekeepers.
But peacekeeping is not the only criteria to become a permanent member of the UNSC.
Using wording from.
Are you guys using correct?
Yeah. Okay, cool, we're done. A minute, 20 seconds remaining.
Is everyone ready?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll provide a brief off-time roadmap. I'll begin by addressing the standard and then going on to my opponent's case, and then time permits strengthening my own. Time begins now. Our opponents provide the standard of international benefits, and since international benefits, and however the UN Charter is the primary standard for today's debate, because the point of the UNSC is to uphold the UN Charter, and we're talking about the UNSC, which means that we should have upholding the UN Charter as first priority above international benefits. So now moving on to our opponent's first contention. In our opponent's first contention, they state that Pakistan tensions will escalate and it could ultimately lead to war. However, Pakistan does not want to go to war. France Presse 2019 writes that Pakistan does not want to go to war with India, and its military spokesman said on Wednesday, hours after Islamabad said, igniting fears of an all-out conflict between the nuclear-armed neighbors. We do not want escalation. We do not want to go to war. Major General Asif Ghafoor told a press conference. Even if Pakistan wants to go to war, however, they cannot afford it. Amir 2019 writes that Pakistan cannot afford to be adventurous on its eastern border given its own state of crisis. Pakistan is in the middle of a severe economic crisis. The country is facing a severe devaluation of its currency and several other economic crises. This shows that even if Pakistan wanted to go to war, they have no choice and they cannot go to war. So since I've refuted my opponent's first contention, I'll now move on to their second, which is human rights violations. However, we show you that the UNSC can actually tell India to stop the human rights violations as a bargaining chip when they get in the UNSC. For example, the UNSC could tell India that they have to stop the human rights violations if they get on the UNSC. Apart from this, Kashmiri citizens already have no hope of self-determination, and it's not unique because Kashmiri citizens say that the fraudulent elections in 1987 extinguished the last flicker of hope among Kashmiris that India would ever capitulate to fair and free plebiscite as ordained by the Security Council. This shows that in the AF world and the NEB world, the Kashmiri citizens will never get self-determination, which shows that their argument is non-unique. So now moving on, UNSC has the ability to tell India to stop Kashmiri abuse if it is on the council as leverage. If India continues the abuse, they have the power to remove India from the UNSC. Since India wants a permanent seat, UNSC has the power and will remove India from the UNSC if they step out of line. Apart from this, Times 2018 writes that about 44 Indians come out of poverty every minute. This shows that India is actually lessening its poverty rate despite claims of our opponent. And it is one of the fastest rates of poverty reduction in the world. Since I finished refuting my opponent's case, I'll now move on to strengthening my own. Our opponents have misunderstood our case. In our case, we stated that India will use the UNSC to get India will use its peacekeepers to get a seat on the UNSC. They say that this is a bargaining chip. However, this is not a bad thing. For example, if one person works extremely hard towards something, yet they're continuously denied, which is in this case a permanent seat, they would obviously feel discouraged. The same is for India. India contributed so many peacekeepers, yet the UNSC still fails to give it a permanent seat. It's obviously withdrawing because it feels like its efforts have not been appreciated. Not only this, however, if India gets on the UNSC as a permanent seat, it would encourage other countries to contribute peacekeeping. As my partner has stated, the gap between the needed peacekeepers and the peacekeepers they have right now is 8,000 and growing. If India gets on the UNSC by contributing peacekeepers, other nations will see this, and they realize that if they contribute peacekeepers, they have a chance to get on the UNSC as well. And that would lead to several other countries contributing peacekeepers as well. Not only this, India, as we've shown in a card, Indian peacekeepers commit the least human rights violations of all countries that commit peacekeepers. This gives a good role model to all the other countries who show that if our peacekeepers commit less human rights violations, then we also have a chance to get on the UNSC. India not only contributes peacekeepers, but also influences other nations to do the same. Thus, we affirm. Thank you.
We're going to take 30 seconds of prep starting now.
Partner ready? Opponents ready? Judges ready?
Yes.
As a brief after rollback, I'm just going to go over my opponent's one and only contention, refute it, and then go back over our opponents and say why they're still on the table. My time starts now. Okay, so although peacekeeping is certainly one of the criteria for being a permanent member, it is definitely not the only one. The
criteria for membership of UNSC are as follows. The nation must be the emerging power as well as their economy must dominate global trades to some extent. The nation must be a leading donor for the UN. Human rights violations cases must be minimum in the nation demanding permanency. The demanding nation must not be in dispute with other nations over any issue that can create a warlike situation. The nation must be contributing to the peace arm of the UNSC, and then of course the bid must be passed with majority. So India already doesn't match two of these criteria. India has a lot of human rights violations, many of which are not reported on as India restricts free speech. And India is currently in a conflict with Pakistan, so permanent membership could certainly create a warlike situation. My opponent's refutation to our Pakistan point was that Pakistan is not ready to go to war with India. However, they have completely dropped the China aspect of this. As we have stated in our case, China is willing to back Pakistan up on this because China opposes India's permanent membership. Now then, Judge, my opponents have not been able to provide any statistics on exactly how effective are these missions. Many peacekeepers, on many deployments, peacekeepers end up watching helplessly while war rages. In order for my opponent's argument to be valid, they need to say exactly how effective are these peacekeeping missions, like what is the result? There needs to be a tangible outcome of these peacekeeping missions in order for their argument to be valid. There's a reason that the UN is not giving India permanent membership, and that's because India is not matching many of the criteria of being a permanent member. Now, Judge, onto our own case. Our first contention was about Pakistan and China and how both of them have expressed their opposition towards India's permanent membership, thus can create a warlike situation and can aggravate tensions. My opponents again have completely disregarded the China aspect. Yes, Pakistan's economy is not as good as India's, but with China, Judge, Pakistan can be a very dangerous threat. Our second contention was about if India joins the UNSC, they will resist human rights intervention. My opponents responded to this contention by saying that the UNSC will help India make its HDI better. However, in the past, India has been opposed to UN intervention that defends human rights. The frequent association of India with China and Russia in Western discourse on humanitarian intervention and R2P, which is the responsibility to protect, is telling of both. India's reflexive abstination on these issues and the West's lack of disposition to understand the constraints of a democratic state with multiple internal challenges to its authorities, such as India, which hosts a number of insurgencies, according to Mukherjee 2013. It is no surprise, therefore, that humanitarian intervention and right to protect were the biggest bones of contention between India and the Western powers on the UNSC in 2011 to 12. India abstained on two crucial votes, on Libya in March 2011 and Syria in October 2011, while repeatedly sounding alarm bells on sovereignty and the need for domestic resolution of domestic conflicts, even when voting in favor of taking action. Judge, in the past, India has been opposed to UN intervention, so what reason to think that the UNSC would be able to help India? How would the UNSC help India if India is opposed to UN intervention? And then they talk about Kashmir. Judge, to be clear, we're just using Kashmir as an example of how India's human rights is very bad. As you stated before, human rights violations currently stop India from getting a seat in the Permanent Council. Some examples of human rights violations are the fact that India has a major issue with child labor. Many Indians don't have access to drinking water, and many live in poverty and poor conditions. For example, 732 million people in India don't have access to proper toilets, increasing the risk of disease and making women and girls susceptible to harassment. Also, Judge, India does not protect free speech. So how can we be sure that India is actually representing the 1.3 billion people in its country if it gets a permanent UNSC seat? The right to freedom of speech in India is not absolute. Finally, India's HDI is one of the lowest in the world. It's 130 out of the 189 countries in the world. India is at least 15 years away from reaching the HDI of a permanent member. For these reasons, Judge, we negate. Thank you.
Okay, Oscar, is it ready? Okay, time starts now. Maybe I have the first question. Go ahead. So you said that China is going to back Pakistan up, right?
Yes.
But you completely ignored our point about how Pakistan doesn't want to go to war.
Why? But see, your point was that Pakistan doesn't want to go to war because
No,
currently,
my point was Pakistan doesn't want to go to war, and even if it wanted to, it cannot.
but with China it can. That's what I'm trying to
you
say.
ignored our point that Pakistan doesn't even want to go to war.
Pakistan alone can't go to war, but with
No,
China it's
We're
war.
saying that Pakistan doesn't even have the intention of going to war.
How come? Then how can you explain the recent terrorist attacks?
That's just tensions. They don't want to go to war.
Can you back
But
up
are the
with
terrorists?
evidence?
Yes, do you have evidence? We have evidence. I
Yeah.
literally stated in my rebuttal speech that the Prime Minister of Pakistan stated that it does not want escalation of tensions and it does not want war. You have the next question.
Okay, thank you. So how exactly, can you put a number on the peacekeeping missions?
Why does it
effective
matter?
are they?
You stated a card that states that peacekeepers watch helplessly. Does it pertain to Indian peacekeepers necessarily?
No, but they pertains to
thank you.
UN peacekeepers. Do you have any evidence to refute that?
Wait, you're saying that UN peacekeepers are effective, not Indian peacekeepers.
Okay, but do you
So
have
how does that
evidence to
support?
refute
How
that?
does this support your claim that India is?
Because Indian peacekeepers are the UN peacekeepers. I'm asking you, do you have any evidence to refute that? It's a simple question.
Well, if other UNSC members are also ineffective, then what difference does this make India?
No, I'm just saying, tell me the number of Indian peacekeeping operations
You don't
that
have a
were
number
effective.
either. You just state peacekeepers in general.
Right, but we're still bringing up evidence to show that a lot of
Evidence doesn't support your claim, though. Your evidence states that UNSC peacekeepers are helpless. It doesn't state that Indian peacekeepers are helpless, and you concede to this.
No, what we're saying is Indian peacekeepers are UN peacekeepers.
Yes.
May I have a question?
No. Can I finish?
Okay, go ahead.
Well, if other UNSC peacekeepers are also helpless, then what difference does that make India? Why are you saying that India shouldn't be? Because if UN peacekeepers are helpless and Indian peacekeepers are also helpless, then why is that a
We're
reason
saying
for India?
peacekeeping isn't the only criteria for being a permanent UNSC
Yes, I agree.
member.
But
You agree?
yeah, I agree.
So
peacekeeping
India-
is the
so
only
India
criteria,
already
but it's
matched-
an important criteria.
India doesn't match two of the criteria already.
Oh, that's arguable.
No. Then tell me why it's not. Bring up
Oh,
evidence.
so you state that you stated that India already ignores human rights violations. So why isn't that non-unique then? You're saying that if India is added, then they'll ignore human rights violations. But
No,
that's
what we're
non-unique.
saying is India, since one of the criteria is that your human rights problems must be minimum, so India doesn't match one of
We
the
have a card
criteria.
stating that peacekeepers actually have a
We're not talking about peacekeepers,
No,
we're talking
this is
about
India.
the nation of India.
Yeah, it says specifically Indian peacekeepers has the lowest case of
Right, but what about the rest of
Can I
India?
finish?
Okay, fine.
It says that Indian peacekeepers have the lowest amount of abuse and sexual abuse cases out of all peacekeepers.
Okay, so that's Indian peacekeepers, but what about the citizens of India?
I'm sorry.